I'm very pleased to be interviewing Pete Moran, who's Chief Revenue Officer of eMediaTRADE. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for coming.
Well, let's start with your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, 30 some odd years ago I started selling cable ads for Cablevision out on Long Island. Grew up through the ranks there, was there for 12 years, and then pursued the entrepreneurial dream. Moved out to Colorado to join a small technology firm that had the crazy idea of replacing tape decks with hard drives. And look how that worked out. So after that I started to play around with things like addressable advertising, interactive television, joined a couple different companies in consulting roles and actually officer roles, and stumbled my way through the world of social media for a while and moved back to New York in 2010, where I belong, I guess. And here I am at eMediaTRADE, and we're sort of the, for lack of a better term, the plumbing, the connectivity points that connect and allow for some of these advanced applications like programmatic trading to actually happen.
Can you give me more detail about what your company does?
Sure. So I'll start with what we don't do. We are not a programmatic company per se. We don't buy inventory. We don't sell inventory. We provide pipes that allow for not only technology companies in the programmatic space, but ad agencies, television stations, cable operators, and cable networks to automate their business workflow processes, get all of that sort of baseline in place to allow for the growth of these new technologies so that they can be reached effectively between the buyer and the seller.
Pete, can you give an example?
Sure, great example. So we just recently launched a product in cooperation with IPG called AdCore OneView. And essentially, what OneView is all about is to take the roadblocks that buyers deal with every day, the spreadsheets, the PDFs, the manual rekeying of RFPs, automate that entire process for them, and then allow for them to electronically send those to whatever distribution outlet they're looking to buy, allow then those sellers of media to create proposals around those RFPs and send them back electronically, and then begin a negotiation process electronically without having to go back and forth with spreadsheets and PDFs.
So in the world of automation, where do you sit in the ecosystem? What is your competitive set?
So it's interesting. I don't know that we have a direct competitor because, as I said before, we don't play in the programmatic space. We play in the automation space. So what we're trying to accomplish is to help those programmatic players, all of them, be able to realize their goals. So we have connection points already in place with every one of the MVPDs, as an example. We're working diligently this quarter on the connectivity for all the major television stations. We've already launched the product with IPG with a handful of cable networks that will expand to all of the cable networks in theory, and the broadcast networks as well. So our point is that if you think of us sort of as the hub, that what agencies have told us is dealing with multiple players in the space creates more work, not less. And one thing I learned in my cable experience, the ad sales business grew as we made it easier for the buyers to buy. And I think that holds true here. If you go back to the 80s, when interconnects were just being formed, that helped the buyers understand and have an easier workflow. Then we created EDI initiatives, which allowed for these telephone book size affidavits to be consolidated into one. Then we began to deliver spots through various technologies so that the ads themselves didn't have to be shipped with tapes. We removed the whole tape deck world and created a world around hard drives, and that has continued. And the consistent theme is that we made it easier to buy, and that's, I think, and sell, by the way, and that's where we have to continue to be, because as the business continues to grow, it becomes more complex. We see now programmatic buying. We hear a lot about multi-platform packages that sit across television, radio, VOD, addressable, etc. Lots and lots of moving parts, not less, more. So unless those moving parts are more easily and readily assembled, it's going to retard the growth of the business. It has to, because these buyers are overwhelmed as it is. the fundamental workflow processes really haven't changed in 30 years. And what we've set out to do is help those who want to advance, whether it's addressable companies, data companies, programmatic companies, whomever. We want to help them reach their goals by making it easier for the ad agencies and the advertisers to buy the inventory.
Does this also involve, after the buy is confirmed and finalized, a stewarding of the buy?
I wouldn't say stewarding, because that implies general ledger, accounting. We don't do that. What we do is once the order is placed, we help the buyers, agencies really, analyze that buy in flight. So for the first time, we're pulling as-run data, as an example, daily, weekly, so that, and you can, the buyers can then measure the success of the flight on a, I wouldn't say real-time basis, but on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, rather than having to wait to the end of the flight. Where this is helpful for everybody is, first, the buyers know how their schedule is performing against their impression goals. Secondly, they're getting more information more readily available, which certainly helps the sellers with their ADU problems that would come at the end of a flight, and they get paid faster. So it's really kind of a three-pronged approach that we think helps the entire ecosystem.